Brotman,
Here.
Kasakian,
Here.
Najarian,
Here.
Mayor Devine.
Here.
Thank you. May we have the roll call for the Housing Authority?
Authority Member Ajinian,
Here.
Agajanian,
Present.
Brotman,
Here.
Devine,
Here.
Najarian,
Here.
Parazian,
Here.
and Chair Kasakian.
Here.
And what's next, please?
The agenda for the Tuesday, May 4th, 2021 joint public meeting of the City Council and the Housing Authority was posted on April 28th, 2021 on the bulletin board outside City Hall.
Thank you. And the next item, please?
Mayor, I do believe that we have moved the closed session to next week, which would be May 11th, 2021.
Correct.
Next item 2 would be community development regarding city council approval of a density bonus and inclusionary housing plan application and associated environmental review. Density bonus housing plan case number PD BP 21064442, Housing Authority approval of execution of a letter of loan commitment and lease option with Meta Housing Corporation for a 127-unit affordable rental housing project for seniors at 900 East Broadway, and resolution of appropriation in the amount of $7,564,757, a total project amount of $9 million. A, City Council motion to approve density bonus and inclusionary housing plan. B, Housing Authority motion authorizing Executive Director execution of letter of loan commitment and lease option with Meta Housing Corporation. C, Housing Authority resolution of appropriation in the amount of $7,564,757, shifting existing council-approved affordable housing appropriations to 900 East Broadway project.
Thank you. And this is a public hearing, so I will open the public hearing. And Mr. Galanian.
Yes, good afternoon. Mayor Devine, members City Council, Housing Chair Kasakian, members of the Housing Authority. The project or the property at 900 East Broadway is one of the three affordable housing sites that the city has purchased in alignment with your vision and direction to create more affordable housing units in Glendale. The presentation will cover the next steps necessary in advancing your vision and your direction to create, which would create 127 affordable housing units. I'm going to turn it over to Mike Fortney, our housing project manager, for the presentation.
Good afternoon, Mayor Devine, council members, Housing Authority Chair Kasakian, and Housing Authority board members. I'm Mike Fortney, Principal Housing Project Manager for the city. I'll go ahead and share the screen now. And can everyone see the screen?
Nope.
No.
Mike, do you want me to put it up?
Let me, oh, I didn't hit the share button. My apologies.
Nope.
Boy, went through this once and had no problem. Oh, I think we have it now.
There you go.
All right, my
There you
apologies
go.
to everyone. Okay, wonderful. All right, on the first slide, I just wanted to emphasize again what actions we're looking for today. From the City Council, we are looking for a review of the CEQA findings and approval of the density bonus housing plan. And from the Housing Authority, we are looking for approval of the letter of loan commitment and lease option, as well as a resolution of appropriation in amount of $7,524,757. 900 East Broadway, we're calling the project Citrus Crossing. It's been for you when you granted the exclusive negotiating agreement with Meta Housing on December 1st. But a quick summary, it is a 127 unit, 100% affordable rental project for seniors. It includes 87 studios, 39 one-bedroom units, and there's an additional manager's unit. The project includes 92 parking spaces in a subterranean structure. 22 of those spaces will be reserved for the project that we'll be talking about next, which is adjacent to this site at 920 East Broadway. And again, the E&A with Meta Housing was approved December 1st. The request from the Housing Authority is $9 million. And I want to say that is in addition to the land lease, which is $6,050,000. That number is exactly half what the Housing Authority paid for the entire site when we acquired it from Tobin Wolf. I do want to stop here just for a moment, if I could too. I wanted to, and I probably should do this more often, I wanted to acknowledge staff that helped get us to where we are now. Just quickly, Michelle Shanazarians in the housing, Roger Kiesel, Jay Platt, Kristen Ass, and Eric Kraus in Planning Division, Yvette Nukian and Jillian Van Moyden in the City Attorney's Office. Many others contributed to this as well, including Enrique in Finance that helped with the resolution of appropriation, and John Bandek and Sandra Rodriguez helped make these PowerPoints much prettier than I originally had. What I have here are two renderings of 900 East Broadway. You've seen these before, and we do have KFA Architects who is responsible for the design on the call on the meeting. They can go through the entitlement package that is included with the report. But I just wanted to present these two slides here, and if at the end of this presentation you would like KFA to walk you through the entitlement set, they're set to do that. So the top one just shows that northwest corner of Citrus Crossing, and then the below image shows the new construction 127 unit project next to the project we'll talk about next at 920, the historic project. So first action again would be for review of the CEQA findings. We commissioned, with the help of Meta Housing, a number of consultants, including ARG, LLG, Urban Crossroads, to study various disciplines to come to the determination that the project does qualify as a Class 32 infill development project, so it is exempt from CEQA. Those findings are attached to the staff report as Exhibit 4. Next, talk about the density bonus. Again, the project is 100% affordable, and it is within 1/2 mile of a major transit stop. We've had discussion recently about the change in density bonus law. Projects that do qualify as 100% affordable and are within 1/2 mile of a major transit stop do qualify for unlimited density bonus, additional height, no parking, and 4 incentives or concessions. On this project, the site allows for a maximum of 30 units before any density bonus is applied. In order to achieve the 127 units the Housing Authority would like to see on the site, we are seeking a 324% density bonus. And for that, we are looking for 4 incentives and concessions. The incentives are listed here: a reduction in the various setbacks, reduction in the unit or the studio size. Normally 600 square feet, we have unit sizes as low as 400 square feet in the project, with an average of about 460 square feet. We are also looking for a concession to allow multifamily housing on the ground floor. That could be done either through this concession or with a conditional use permit. And we're also looking for a reduction in required common open space, roughly half the required space from 16,500 to roughly 8,500. In addition to those, we're looking for 3 waivers. One, an increase in lot coverage from 50% to 58%. We're looking at an increase in floor area ratio, and we're looking for a reduction in the additional open space requirement. All of these concessions and all of these waivers we're pursuing and need in order to achieve that 127 units, that density that we're looking for. Next, I wanted to talk about income limits on the project. What you have here are 2020 HCD limits. I apologize to you, 2021 limits just were published earlier this week, but didn't make it into this presentation report. They're very similar. Actually, 21 did increase slightly, but you can see on this graph here, the upper limits of extremely low income on a 1-person, 2-person, and 3-person household, which would be the household sizes that we would have either in the studio or as 1-bedrooms, 1, possibly 2 persons in studios, and 2 or 3-person households in the 1-bedrooms. It also shows the upper limits of the very low income, as well as the upper limits of low income households. Next, we want to show the unit mix and rents that are proposed for 900 East Broadway. The studios are targeted as low as 20% AMI with a gross rent of $414, but what the tenant would actually pay per month would be $349, and that's because we assume a utility allowance of 57. On the higher end, we're targeting 70% AMI, which is higher than what you are accustomed to seeing in previous 100% affordable projects. In previous projects, we have targeted between 20 and 60% area median income. We are pursuing 4% tax credits versus 9% tax credits on this project. And so the average area median income targeting on a 4% deal is 60%. That's the average versus what you're usually accustomed to on a 9% deal, where the average AMI targeting is 50% AMI or less. So you are seeing rents on the high end that are higher than what you're probably accustomed to before. We do have in all of our 9% tax credit units, our projects, quite a few 60% AMI targeted units. Here, again, we are targeting some 70% units. And if I could just explain a little bit about that, the 4% tax credits, unlike the 9% tax credits, do not bring enough tax credit equity to the project that a 9% would do. So what you're forced to do is target higher rents in order to support a higher perm loan. There was some concern during briefings about the targeting of some of these rents, particularly at the 70% level. Staff has discussed this with Meta, and it is possible to target lower income targeting, but it would require additional funds from the Housing Authority. And we certainly can talk about that more.
Excuse me.
Now, to talk about sources of funds, we have 2 tables here. One just showing the sources of funds during construction. The other table showing sources of funds through perm. So this is after, perm would be after construction is done. If you can see here, both in the case of the construction phase as well as the permanent phase, the Glendale Housing Authority's participation would be the $9 million cash that we are looking for now in the letter of loan commitment, as well as the ground lease valued at $6,050,000. So we'll put our money into the project pari passu with a construction lender during the course of construction, and then our dollars will stay into the project on a perm level after the project converts. To talk about some of the other sources, we are providing. Well, let me first say there are $6,300,000 worth of tax credit equity that will go into the project during the construction phase of the project. I had mentioned earlier that 22 of the 92 parking spaces that'll be provided at 900, 22 of them will be provided at 920. We valued those spaces at $30,000 a piece. So you see that line out on 660,000. The developers deferred fee, if you can see that, is almost $4.8 million. So the developer is deferring their fee through the construction phase. The total development for the project is $57 million, and that equates to a per unit development cost of $450,000 per unit. And then quickly into the perm, what we've got is a $16.7 million perm loan. That's a much larger perm loan than what you're accustomed to seeing. But again, that is because we are targeting higher rents in order to make the project pencil. Again, you see that the Glendale Housing Authority's participation, both in cash at the letter of loan commitment as well as the ground lease value, those are there through permanent. We have the additional tax credit equity coming in at 21.37 million. Again, the parking for 920 is there. And you can see the deferred developer fee of $3.4 million. So you can see basically what the developer fee for the project is basically the delta between the roughly $8 million that the developer would be entitled to under the 4% program versus what they are not deferring once we convert into perm. So that's a brief explanation of those sources of funds, both in construction and
Okay.
in the permanent phase.
Okay, Mike, Councilmember
Yes.
Agajanian has a question for you, I believe, on the previous slide.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
I mentioned before, I want to go to page, where did it go? Sorry, one second.
So the unit mix and
Yeah,
rents?
On page 8, page 8. As I mentioned before, this studio for 1,449, even when we consider utility allowance of 57, it comes to $1,392, the rent for a studio. Then what happens? I mean, to me, it's such an expensive proposition, this. And what happens if we would not have 47? We have to, based on, I understand it, we have to have 47 unit, which people, they should be able to pay this, to pencil this project out. Am I right? How this going to work? Let's say nobody comes to rent or accept it. Then can we go to AMI of lower ones? Or it will not pencil out for the contract for the developer? This is very expensive.
To answer the question, it can be done, but it would take additional funds from the Housing Authority to achieve that. And we do have some numbers that I can share with you if you care. One example is to take all of the 70% studios and all of the one bedrooms that are also targeted 70%. If the Housing Authority would like to lower those to 60% AMI, the cost of doing that, because there's so many units at the 70% level, is approximately $2.7 million. And if the Housing Authority were to take it further, and if they wanted to bring the 60% units down to 50%, in addition to bringing the 70% to 60%, the total cost to do that is $3.9 million.
So in other words, we'd have to invest $4 more million into the project.
But I mean, for a studio
ma'am.
to pay 1,392, I cannot imagine. What's the rent of studio in Glendale now? Is not even that much.
If I may
1,400.
interject on that, I acknowledge that these rents are higher than what you're accustomed to under our traditional 9% programs. I did, because we're familiar with some of the market rate projects in the downtown area, I did check, and studios in some of the brand new projects such as Brio and Next on Lex, the studios range from $2,397 to $2,581 in monthly rent. And one bedrooms range from $2,501 to $2,678.
No,
So
this,
again, I acknowledge that these rents are higher than what you're accustomed to with our 9% program, but they are still considerably lower than market rate new construction projects in Glendale.
no. What was the size of those that you mentioned the rent value of it? You just mentioned studio for 2,000 or higher, but what's the square footage of that studio? How big is that studio?
Yes, and I tried to get that information before this meeting. I was unable to do that, but I am still working on that, and I will provide you that information. I would guess that the average studios and the average one bedrooms are probably larger than the studios and one bedrooms in this project, but I can get that information and confirm that.
Okay, but this, to me, it looks very expensive. Anyway.
Any other comments from my colleagues? If not, $450,000 a unit is pretty expensive. You can almost buy a house for that. Well, not in Glendale, but that's, is that because of the price of lumber and everything else that's affecting the overall cost of this project? Yes.
If I may, Mayor Devine,
Yes.
that is part of it. Costs have gone up dramatically. Lumber, copper, concrete, all of those things. But we are getting economies of scale because of the size of the project, the 127 units. If you look at the total development costs of some of our more recent projects, including Vista Grande Court, East 121, the $450,000 isn't a lot more than our average. I believe Vista Grande Court, the average was about $400,000, maybe $410,000 per unit total development cost. So part of it is because materials having increased in price, but also fortunately for us, we are getting some economies of scale because of the size of the project.
Would this qualify, the 70%, would that qualify for workforce housing?
Workforce housing is generally defined as 80 to 120%, what we used to call moderate income housing for under the old redevelopment days. So even these 70% units are below what we would typically call a workforce housing unit.
Okay, thank you. I guess you can proceed.
Thank you, Mayor.
I guess
I'm
he wants
sorry?
to.
Ms.
Mr.
Lansfame, did you want to?
I'm sorry. It's, I just wanted to ask a question.
Sorry.
Mike, 70% would be generally where on this income limits? At the low, or would that be moderate?
Yes, so low income ranges from 51% to 80% of area median income. So 70% still fits within that window of low income.
So if you look at the chart and you back into it, this is 30% of their income, which is the gauge that we use for affordability.
Okay. I remember that back in my single days renting apartments, 30% of your take home. Okay, let's move on, Mike.
Okay. So next, I just wanted to summarize the terms of the letter of loan commitment. Some of this we have covered.
I have to go back to.
Oh, sorry, Mike, to interrupt you, but
Yes.
Councilmember Agajanian has another question.
Let's go back to
Okay.
page. Thank you, Ms. Devine. Page 8 again. Okay. I'm looking at the studios. There are 47 studios with 70% of AMI. And when you add up the balance of it, is less than 47 even. You add up the studios, that's 31, 37, 40. We have 40 units, which are 60 and under AMI, and 47. I mean, you guys went to the high end of this. And when you go to one bedrooms, again, if you add up the units, so we have 22, which is 70% AMI, and the balance of it all together is 13, 16, 17. We have 17 units of AMI of less than 70% and 22 of 70. I mean, this is like concentrated on the high end of AMI based on what has been written here. How this happened?
That is correct, yes. The average AMI on this deal and the average AMI targeting for a 4% tax credit deal is 60%. So that's what you're seeing here. Under a 9% program, which is what you're more accustomed to, the average AMI is 50% or less.
But this
Mi-
is not
Mr. Agajanian-
50 and less.
Maybe if I could try it this way. Because of the way that this project is funded, it's a zero-sum game. You've got to put in enough money to make the project work, and I forgot, Mike, whatever the total construction cost is. Using the 4% tax credit gets you less money from the tax credit to put into the deal. Therefore, you have to have more of a permanent loan or more money from the housing authority to make it all work. And what they've done here is they've targeted rents at the average 60%, but you're going to get a concentration at 70 so that they can make enough revenue to meet that permanent loan. As Mike said, we could reduce those rents by putting in more money, thus making it less costly on the permanent loan. But everything's a zero-sum game. So somewhere you've got to come up with that money. As Mike keeps telling you, and this is what we're familiar with, 9%, you're getting twice as much from the tax credit, more than twice, than you are with this funding. And it's just a function of the number of units, the cost to construct, and how all the financing comes together. That we're targeting, that we're only able to target at 60%.
Madam Mayor.
Councilmember Najarian.
Right, and let's not forget, this is a decision that council made when we switched the makeup from senior to family, if you remember. And Mike warned us. They said we're not going to be able to get two projects both in at 9%. So that's why this developer, I guess, is pivoting and going to the 4%. Is that not what happened, Mike? Is that?
Councilmember Najarian, I very much appreciate your comment, and not to point blame or anything of that sort, but you're very much correct. When this was a family project of 80 units and then later 88 units, it would have been a 9% project. The conversion to a senior project did not preclude it from still pursuing 9%, but making it a senior project and still trying to get 127 units did preclude it from achieving a 9%. It just cannot be funded that way. Thank you.
Okay. I think, does that answer your
All
question?
right, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, Mike. Summary of terms.
Very well, thank you. I'll try to get us where we are. Okay, and again, we've covered some of this already. We're targeting between 20% and 70% of area median income. I did want to point out, it's always a minimum of 55 years. However, we do often go above 55 years. We have done 65 years. We've done an option with 75 years. Part of that is a function of the finances. The project has to show that it is financially feasible. So in order to do that, in order for the project to show that our loans on the project, as well as other loans, can be paid off. To do that, oftentimes we have to extend the letter of loan, extend the lease option beyond 55 years. And I'm very much anticipating having to do that on this project. We don't have the information yet to determine if in fact it's necessary, but I would say in all likeliness, we will have to have a minimum period of probably 65 years, if not 75. And we'll know that before we bring the AHA to you. And again, the total assistance under this scenario is $15,050,000. Again, that consists of our acquisition price for the land of $6,050,000, as well as $9 million in additional cash at this point. That equates to a $118,000 per unit subsidy. That is below our average of roughly $140,000 per unit, and that is largely because of the economies of scale that we've got here. We do have a very large project. And just probably to reiterate, I think we've covered this, but the authority's assistance will be in a residual receipts loan. So this money to the project is not a grant, it is a loan. These have to be paid off, which is kind of goes back to the discussion on having to have the project for longer than 55 years, probably 65, if not even 75 years. At the end of the lease period, though, and at the end of the affordability covenants, again, I want to point out the housing authority retains fee title to the property throughout. It will retain ownership, and it'll own the improvements at the end of the lease. And again, just to emphasize that. Oh, please.
No, I had a question, but well, you finish your thought, and then I had a question to ask.
You betcha. Again, 127 units, that's the total. 1 unit is reserved for the manager. The letter of loan commitment does expire December 31st, 2022. We put that there to give Meta the opportunity. Their plan is to apply this month. We're really rushing everything to get it for you so that they can apply. There is another opportunity in September of this year to apply for those tax credits. And then we wanted to give them that opportunity again next year if we fail to secure it this year. Is this a good time, Mr. Brotman?
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Brotman.
I was just hoping you could touch on a question we discussed before, which is the potential and likelihood of us ever seeing any residual receipts to reduce the amount that we ultimately lend out. And I think the same answer you'd give for that would probably apply to the developers seeing any of their deferred fee ever get back into their pockets. And I just thought it would be helpful if you could just explain. And I think what you told me was it is highly unlikely that we would see much of that, or the developer would see much, or if any, of their deferred fee back.
Mr. Brotman, you're exactly right. The residual receipts, neither the developer nor the housing authority anticipates seeing any residual receipts. And that's typical on these projects for at least the first 10 or 12, maybe even 15 years. And then there's a small trickle. Once the project's firm financing that debt has been relieved, which is typically a 30, 35 year debt. Once that's relieved, then there is cash flow for residual receipts. And that's when you can start to see payments made to both the deferred developer fee as well as the housing authority's loans. And that again is another reason why we have to extend out the affordability period and the lease period beyond the 55 years in order to show that those loans do get paid back eventually.
And so the developer, so we're putting in the 9 million. The developer, I think you showed before, when we move from the construction phase to the permanent phase, the developer gets to pull out 1.4 million, I think was the number, right? Which is, I did a rough calculation, it's about 2.5% of the project value, a little less than 2.5% that they get to pull out. And that's that's all they're going to see. You're saying for at least, what, 15 years, and then there could be a trickle beyond that, but they're not really counting on anything. And it's unlikely that they would see much beyond that 1.4 million. And I just bring that up because sometimes there's a misunderstanding about how this public-private partnership works. And it's important just, I think, for the public to understand. The developers are getting a relatively small and fixed fee for putting these projects together. These are essentially public projects, but we're bringing a developer in to do some things that we probably wouldn't, be able to do ourselves very well. But they're getting a fixed, relatively small fee, and when you look at it in terms of the amount of time and energy they put in, and risk they take. So I just thought it would be good if you could maybe just make that a little clearer, again, to people.
And I appreciate it, Mr. Brutman. You're right. The fee that the developer will get at perm is roughly the $1.4 million. The rest would be deferred. And some of this does still get negotiated and will be brought to you with the AHA. Oftentimes, we will split residual receipts 50-50 with the developer. So half of any trickle of residual receipts goes towards paying the deferred fee, and half of it goes towards paying down the housing authority loans. But that's a typical scenario. It isn't set in stone. It is something that we'll have to negotiate further with the developer.
Okay, thanks, Mike.
Ms. Devine.
Mike, council member
Yes, ma'am.
Agajanian has another question.
Okay, on the one unit which was mentioned on the previous page, that one unit is for the manager is 930 square feet. Am I right?
That's correct, yes.
But is this office and like the manager's house, or is just it's their residence?
It's primarily the resident manager's residence.
But
There
why-
will be a leasing office in the building
Okay.
and some space for social services.
Okay,
But
so the
very often
leasing,
we do entice good resident managers in our affordable housing projects with a comfortable 2-bedroom apartment, and that's very common.
okay, the residence manager, why he has to have 930 square feet is a large unit, especially where the unit size are 400, 430, and why is it that should be that large if it's the person's or the manager's residence? What's the reason?
Honestly, it's a good size 2-bedroom. I do acknowledge that, and we do want to attract a very good resident manager to the building. It's a single unit. I don't know if we reduce that unit to 800 square feet, which would be a pretty modest 2-bedroom, that the project would really benefit from that additional 130 square feet. But I mean, that is something that we could look at if it was the housing authorities and the city council's direction.
I mean, I can understand if the unit sizes would be larger, so the manager's unit is large too, but I mean, in a building which is 400 square feet, 430 square feet, to have a manager's unit 930, I think it's not appropriate. Thank you.
Okay, Mike, continue.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, thank you. I believe we are at the lease option, just discussing the terms of that. We talked about the 55-year. It will more than likely be 65 or perhaps even 75, and that depends on the analysis that we have to do later. I do want to point out, though, that it has been the housing authority's policy not to have the lease run any longer than the affordability covenants. That is something that has been requested from the housing authority numerous times, and that is something that we have held the line on. So as long as there is a lease with the developer, there will also be the affordability covenants in place. And the lease option will expire at the end of 2022, just like the letter of loan commitment. And it will expire if Meta has not been able to achieve the 4% tax credits in 2022. And again, the fully capitalized value of the rent, it's $1 per year, but the fully capitalized value is $6,050,000. Again, that number is simply half the $13.1 million we paid for the entire site. That includes 920's apartment. And I did mention this before I brought up this bullet point, but the ground lease will run with the affordability covenants.
Mike, I have a
To talk quickly on
Okay,
the fiscal impact.
Mike, I have a question.
yes.
A quick
Yes, ma'am.
question. So if Meta does not receive an award of 4% tax credits, what will be the next move? Will they go for another round of tax credits, or will they pull out altogether, or what's the scenario there?
We are giving Meta Housing probably 6 bites at these tax credits. The May application this year, there's another application in September of this year. And if history repeats itself, there'll more likely be 4 rounds next year. So Meta has those opportunities to achieve an award of tax credits. If they are unable to do that during that time period, then our next step would be then to either offer to extend that out with Meta or find another developer to partner with.
Okay, thank you.
Again, on the fiscal impact, so it's a $9 million that in additional cash beyond the land which we've already expended. We don't have a resolution of appropriation for the total $9 million. The reason for that is some of those dollars have already been appropriated. We are looking in the low and moderate income housing asset fund, $1,725,000, of which almost $300,000 has already been appropriated. The balance of $1.435 million will be requested as part of the 21-22 proposed budget. That is because we're able to do that because none of the funds are actually going to be drawn down before the end of this fiscal, before the end of this fiscal. And I also wanted to just touch real quickly on the low and moderate income housing asset fund, if I may. If you recall back in December, we provide an annual report on our low and moderate income housing asset funds. We are at a point now where we are required to spend 100% of our low and moderate income housing asset funds on units that qualify as extremely low income. So we have to be careful with how much low mod dollars we put into a project because those dollars have to target those very low units. The additional or the balance of funds, Measure S funds, are much more flexible. So we're putting in we're proposing to put in $7.25 million in Measure S funds. And those were also previously approved. And then on to next steps, with the approval, assuming we have an approval today on the density bonus, the letter of loan, and the lease option, Meta Housing will then go ahead and apply for the 4% tax credits. I have a date of May 17th here. I believe that date just got extended today by 1 week. So I believe the application is formally May 24th, but we'll still get all our ducks in a row and ready to apply when that application is open. We are scheduled to go before Design Review Board on May 27th for review and approval of design. We will negotiate an affordable housing agreement for the Housing Authority's consideration. Some other little finer points, such as share of residual receipts, which Mr. Broadman had mentioned, will be brought with the AHA. It's our hope that we can have that AHA draft brought to you for consideration prior to Meta Housing actually accepting tax credits. That is our intent. And then continuing on, The other steps that still obviously need to be done. Once we know we have secured the 4% tax credits, Meta goes right into building plan check. We still have to secure additional funding, in particular the construction loan. There's not a lot of sources of funds on this project. If all of those things come to place, we have what's called a construction financing event, which kicks off that construction. And construction can then commence immediately following that. We believe we can get to completion of the project in May of this year by late 2023, but on a more conservative estimate, early 2024. Part of that is driven by the subterranean parking structure. That really does add time, probably 6 months to the project. So, without the subterranean structure, you could probably build a project this size, with 18 to 20 months, where with that subterranean structure, you're adding another 6 months. And then as typically, what we do is roughly 6 months prior to our anticipation of a certificate of occupancy, we begin that marketing and lease up program so that we have 100% leased up project. I say 90 days after C of O. We've often done that within 30 or even 45 days of that certificate of occupancy, where we have 100% occupancy of the units. And with that's the presentation. I'm very happy to try to answer any questions that you may have. And again, KFA Architects is available to walk through some of the design if you wish. We also have Meta Housing, including Casey Burke, Chris Maffers, Taylor Rasmussen, and a number of consultants that help with both the density bonus findings as well as the CEQA findings. All are available for you to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Are there any questions from my colleagues?
Mayor,
Will
I
phone
do have a
calls?
caller.
Okay. Are there any questions from my colleagues at this time? No. I have one question. The apply for the award, 4% tax credits, I guess by May 17th, correct?
Yes,
When do you expect a decision? Do you have any idea? How long does it usually take them to decide?
It usually takes 2 months to get a formal answer, although very quickly after there's an application made, there's a number of organizations out there that will summarize all of the applications that were made statewide, and they score those applications based on the information that was provided in the applications. So you have a pretty good idea within a month
Okay.
of the application, whether or not you're going to get the award. But then the formal decision is typically about 2 months after.
Okay, all right, thank you. Hopefully we'll have something good in a month after that. So we have one phone call. Oh, Mr. Councilmember
I do
Broughton?
have a question. Mike, could you speak to something I think we talked about when you first brought this, which is whether this would be an all-electric building, and I also have a question on the EV stalls. I see that there's one EV stall that's going to be provided out of 66 parking? No, out of 92 parking spaces. That, I think, given where we're going with electric vehicles in California, that's certainly not going to be enough. And there's some that are electric ready, but that's still only an additional 10 spots. When and how and who decides to put chargers into those EV ready stalls, and what's going to happen if we need a lot more EV? So if you could just address those 2 points, I'd appreciate it.
Okay, and I believe that is correct. And if John Arnold, who's the lead architect, Morgan is also available. If those numbers are incorrect, please let me know. But if it's something that the Housing Authority would like, if that's the direction that you provide between now and when we bring the draft AHA, if you want additional EV spaces, give us that direction now if you would, and we will work to negotiate that into the AHA so that there are more stalls provided than what we have now.
Yeah, I mean, that would be my vote, would be to, ensure that it's all electric construction firstly, so that we're not dealing over the next 55 or 75 years at the cost of having to retrofit. So that's number one. And number two is additional stalls, certainly additional EV ready stalls. I mean, the actual EV chargers can be put in as the demand ramps up, but certainly wouldn't want us to face a whole slew of costs related to, re-engineering the electrical supply.
And I apologize to you, Mr. Broadman, you did bring 2 points, one being 100% electric, which we had confirmed in the ENA that the project will be. And then the other issue, of course, was the EV stalls.
Okay. Shall we go to the phone calls, please?
Can I ask one question?
Oh, yes, Mr. Aginian?
Yes, I would like to know, I saw a commence the date of completion. Is there a projected date of groundbreaking?
Yes, so yes, I apologize if I don't think I was clear with that. If we are awarded the tax credits when we apply in May, the groundbreaking would probably happen at the beginning of next year, 2022. So in the early months of 22 is when we would begin construction.
Thank you.
Okay.
And if I can just ask one really quick
Councilman
question.
Kasakian?
Thank you. In terms of the concessions that we're making regarding setbacks, how much space is this going to give? I mean, I looked at the drawings, some of them, it was a little hard to read. The one thing I don't want is in any of our construction in the city for us to allow what has happened in the past, which is for buildings to encroach, keep encroaching upon the public right of way, the sidewalk, and quite honestly, I would prefer to see wider sidewalks. Is there any way that staff can show what this is like? Because in any of the very nicely presented renderings, they all appear to have pretty narrow sidewalks. It looks like probably the minimum width that we have in the city. And I certainly would like to see a little bit wider.
And Councilman Kasakian, I want to say that was one of my questions was, is there going to be enough space for trees? Because
Trees are people to walk alongside each other.
There are trees shown in the drawings, but I just want to make sure that there is, with this setback and green space, that there is room for trees. So I guess we can ask the architect those 2 questions.
Thank you.
Sure.
Mayor, yes, if I could, I was going to ask John Arnold, our lead architect, to address that. If memory serves me, and I hope he'll correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe we have pushed the building back from Broadway further than what we needed to, and part of that was to try to respect the setback that already exists on 920. But Mr. Arnold, if you would please talk about the setbacks and maybe landscaping, and correct me if I'm wrong on the Broadway setback.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone, Madam Mayor and City Council. Thanks for having me. Yes, Mike, you are correct. The front setback on Broadway is extra wide. We haven't taken away anything from city property, which is the right of way, nor have our landscape isn't on the property in question. But we do have a very broad setback along Broadway. It is 20 feet, and that was to coincide to the historical project next door that has a deep setback as well. So we didn't want to come right up to the sidewalk like a commercial building. We did want to provide a deep landscape space on the property of the project. That said, the sidewalk is not getting narrower or wider, and there is space already existing in the public right-of-way for trees, and then we do have space on our property itself for additional landscaping. So the building's not right up to the property line, but the public right-of-way is not changing at all, if that answers your question.
Okay, thank you. The phone call, did we get the phone call?
Mayor, I do have 2 phone calls on the line. How many minutes would you like to give them, and would you want me to accept more
Let's give
calls?
them 3 minutes.
3 minutes.
Sure.
Do you want me to take more calls, or do you want me to stop at this?
Let's go with 2 for now. We've kind of discussed this.
Catherine Yurka, you're live. Catherine?
Hi, Madam Mayor, members of council and staff. Thank you for taking my comments today. I had a question and a concern. The concern has to do with how the concessions and waivers are being presented to you in the public. I think it's very important to be clear about what the city is asking for, or sorry, what the applicant is asking for. This staff report claims the applicant's requesting 4 concessions and 3 waivers. But here's concession number 1, reductions in various street front, street side, and interior setbacks. In projects brought by private developers, these are treated separately because each one is a variation from a building standard. Here, the project is requesting 11 separate deviations from the code for setbacks on multiple stories, street facing, and interior, as was noticed in the public hearing document. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't approve those requests, although, man, that building is big and awfully massive. But I recognize that the housing crisis is big and awfully massive, too. But I do think it's important that the city be consistent and clear. According to the public notice, with all those separate issues, the applicant is requesting 4 concessions, because I think that's the maximum, and then 13 waivers. And it's important that you don't get private developers later on expecting that deviations from multiple setbacks will qualify as a single incentive or concession. Also, I just wanted to briefly mention that in the Historic Resources Report, ARG mentions an approximately 22-foot alley between the 2 buildings, and it will be converted into pedestrian open space, which I think is fine. I just wanted to know if any of that separation, that 22 feet, is going to be lost or encroached on from above through things like pop-outs. And in a way, that's related to the questions just asked by council members Kazakian and Devine. It seems it's important in keeping the 6-story building, which again is quite large and lacks the usual step backs that we would demand from private development or non-affordable development at that size, that we keep it as separate as possible from the resource next door. And I agree, go electric. And that's all I wanted to say. Thank you so much for your time.
She said 31 waivers? 3. Isn't it 3 waivers? Mr. Lansfeld? Mike?
You're on mute, Mike.
Mayor Devine, yes. I believe the most qualified person to answer or address the question regarding the setbacks and whether that should be a single concession versus multiple, I believe Eric Kraus or Roger Kiesel probably best qualified to answer that.
No, well,
or perhaps the city attorney's office.
No, I was asking about the waivers. She mentioned 31 waivers, and I
think
only
she said
see
13.
3. Is there 31?
She said 13.
Pardon?
13.
She said 13?
That's what I heard.
Are there 13?
Yes,
13. Okay.
Mayor, what she is suggesting, if I understood her correctly, is that we have a single concession for setbacks. If you were to list each of the concessions, each of those setbacks, concessions or waivers, you have, as she indicated, upwards of 13. And I believe either Eric Kraus or Roger Kiesel could respond to whether or not it's standard for the city to treat all the setbacks as a single concession.
Okay, Roger? Eric? Comments? Are they here to come?
Good afternoon, Madam Mayor. Can you all hear me?
We can.
Hi. Yes, in affordable housing projects, it is standard for all setback deviations to be included as one concession or waiver.
Oh. Okay. All right. Any other, another phone call.
We have one more
go.
caller. Karen Kwok. Karen?
Hi, this is Karen Kwok. I wanted to give you an update since the last time we all came together to talk about the Meta Housing Corporation. Yeah, I sent 2 files to Mr. Dimon early today. If he would be kind enough to display them, please. On December 2nd, the day after the council meeting, I reached out to Chris Mathis of Meta Housing, and I asked him to confirm in writing that they are rescinding their 3% rent increase during the middle of the pandemic. And I was really impressed. 2 hours after I heard from him, the tenants at ACE 121, the existing affordable mid-housing building in Glendale, were very happy to send me copies of this letter that they received, that their rent increase had been rescinded. Now, this letter is very vaguely worded, but I'm ready to excuse that because I'm impressed with the speed with which they got the word out to their tenants before they paid their December rent. Okay, next slide, please. And I was also very happy to hear that even after receiving a written confirmation, Chris Mathis very kindly asked us to let him know if there are any additional tenant concerns, and he will do his best to address them. I'm happy to report that we have met with the tenants at ACE 21 several times since then, and they did bring up other concerns about their building, which we transmitted to Chris, and they were also promptly addressed. The tenants also informed us they started seeing notices in the Armenian language in the elevator. Now, they told me that it was clearly done by Google Translate and it was laughably incomprehensible, but still they're taking steps toward making sure that tenants understand their documents. And the tenants also reported to us a couple of months ago that they received word from Beta Housing to ask in which language would you prefer to have your documents sent to you. Now, these are actually moves that we would expect of any developer and any landlord. But the sad truth is that it was clear, as these tenants indicated to us, that they had never received these types of documents from Beta Housing before. So as much as I respect Mr. Forney's presentation, with all due respect, your information is still coming only from a single source. That when you start talking to tenants, you realize that the complaint that they came to us with is actually the tip of the iceberg. Once you develop a relationship with them and start talking to them, you hear many, many more stories that you do not get from slick marketing brochures given to you by developers. There are many other sides of the story that you are still choosing not to hear. And you will not find out these stories unless you make it a point, make it a high priority to talk to the tenants who actually live in these buildings and tenants who live in other Meta Housing buildings. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kwok. That's it?
Mayor, no more calls. Would you like us to take more calls, or would you like us to stop taking calls?
Are there more?
Not at this time, there
Okay.
isn't.
No, I think
We're done.
we've exhausted that, so thank you very much.
Madam Chair-
Yes,
Mayor,
Yes, Mayor, if I
if there
may.
is no issue, I would like to move the item.
okay. Well, I want to close the hearing first, so.
Okay.
And is there any discussion amongst my colleagues? Are we prepared for this motion?
Ms. Mayor?
Yes, Laura.
Ms. Mayor?
Yes, Ms.
So I just wanted to tell that this is the first time since I was on the board, we're getting this big of a size report in detailed, great report. And I want to thank you, the whole staff, Michael, everybody for doing this report and whatever they do for the community. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Parazian. Exactly. Thank you to staff for all this work. I know it wasn't, it was time-consuming and at times probably challenging. So we have a motion on the floor.
I'll second the
council?
motion for council.
All right.
And just add that I'm glad this project is moving forward. It's whether with the 4% versus 9%, as long as we can get this done, get these units to market, I think that's great. I haven't brought up the issue of units for the developmentally disabled because I don't want to necessarily throw in a wrench that may delay this anymore given the timeline that was presented to us. But I do want to assert that for any other projects that we have coming forward, and I know that we've already set aside at least 12 for Pioneer, that we should be considering this. I want anyone who's out there listening, any of the developers and companies that are in this realm of affordable housing, to know that at least that is something that is very important to me to make sure that we include
Right.
that. But for this, I'm happy to second the council motion.
Okay, thank you. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Agajanian,
Yes.
Brotman,
Yes.
Kasakian,
Yes.
Najarian,
Yes.
and Mayor Devine.
Yes.
And may I ask City Attorney whether the motion and the resolution for Housing Authority should be moved separately, or can they be done in one action?
They can be taken together, Mr. Chair.
Okay, I think we just did that.
For the Housing Authority?
I would like to move for the housing authority.
Is there a second for the Housing
I'll
Authority?
second. Sure.
May we have roll call?
Authority Member Ajinian,
Yes.
Agajanian,
Yes.
Brotman,
Yes.
Divine,
Yes.
Najarian,
Yes.
Parazian,
Yes.
and Chair Kasakian.
Yes.
Thank you. And what's the next item, please?
Item number 3 would be community development regarding city council approval of a density bonus and inclusionary housing plan application and associated environmental review, density bonus housing plan, case number PDBP 21064458, and Housing Authority execution of a letter of loan commitment and lease option with Adobe Communities for a 40-unit affordable rental housing project for seniors at 920 East Broadway. A, city council motion to approve density bonus and inclusionary housing plan. B, housing authority motion authorizing executive director execution of letter of loan commitment and lease option with Adobe Communities. And that is all.
Thank you. And I'll open the public hearing on this one. And can we have the report, please, Mr. Galanian?
Yeah, good afternoon again, Madam Mayor, members of City Council, Housing Authority Chair Kasakian, members of the Housing Authority. Similar to the previous item that was just presented to you, this is the second affordable housing project, second of the third that the Housing Authority recently purchased, albeit a smaller property, and hence only 40 affordable units will be created as part of this project and the plan. And I'm going to turn it over to Mike Fortney, our Principal Housing Project Manager, to provide the presentation.
All right. Good afternoon again, Mayor Devine, council members, Housing Authority Chair Kasakian, Housing Authority board members. If I may, I'll go ahead and share my screen. And work. Just to confirm, is everyone able to see the screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, all right, wonderful. All right, so now we are on 920 East Broadway. A lot of the concepts, a lot of this kind of structure is very similar to 900, so I can probably get through this quicker. I'll just highlight things that are different from this project and the other. But again, the actions here, the city council approval of the density bonus after review of the CEQA findings. The CEQA findings are the same as 900, with one exception. This project qualifies both as a Class 31 and Class 32 exemption. And then the Housing Authority approval of a letter of loan commitment and lease option, this time with Abode Communities, often called Adobe. It's Abode. We're calling the project Harrower Village, and that's out of respect for the Harrower Labs, which is the reason why this is a historical property. What we're doing is an adaptive reuse and historical preservation of the 3 existing historic buildings and adding an additional building for a grand total of 40 units, all reserved for seniors and 100% affordable. There will be 14 studios, 25 one-bedrooms with 1 two-bedroom manager unit. We had mentioned before, 22 of the stalls that we'll build at 900 East Broadway will be for the 920 project. Abode Communities is looking for $3.5 million from the Housing Authority to get this project done, and that is in addition to the $6,050,000 land rates. Some images of the Harrower project from Broadway. You can see the building. Once we get the vines removed and get it cleaned up, that is what it's going to look like. You can also see on this one rendering, I know it's difficult to see, but you can see the alley that separates both 900 and 920. Again, that is planned to be a pedestrian paseo, so we'll not have vehicular traffic through there. And if you can see, we'll create a new alley on the south end of 900 that would exit out to Cedar Avenue. The other rendering is of the courtyard, and that also shows a 3-story building, although the first level is largely subterranean. It's difficult to see, but that is not a, it's difficult probably to see in the rendering, but that is not a stucco building. That is kind of a brick veneer look to it, that off-white brick veneer. So if I do hope you can see that. If not, I can provide better renderings for you later. So the same exact studies were done on this project for Sequoia. We studied the 2 projects together because, for a lot of reasons, really, the proximity, the sharing of the parking. We also looked at the historic nature of 920, but also the impact of 900 on 920. And what we found is 920 qualifies both for a Class 32 as well as a Class 31 CEQA exemption. Density bonus, here we're not looking for the large density bonus that we were looking for on 900. It does qualify as 100% affordable, and it is within half a mile of a major transit stop. We're allowed 34 units. We're seeking 40, so that density bonus is only 17%. And again, that's because we're adaptively reusing 3 historic buildings and just adding 1 additional building. So although it is eligible for unlimited density, additional height, no parking, and for incentives, we are not looking for anything more than 17% density bonus. We are providing parking, and we're not looking for additional height, and I'll get through the incentives and concessions. So the 4 incentives and concessions, one, again, very similar to 920, and that is to reduce the unit size of the studios from 600 square feet minimum down to 460 square feet. We are allowing multifamily housing on the ground floor. Elimination of private open space for the dwelling units. That is because we simply can't add balconies to an existing historic building. We say the elimination of private storage, but in fact, we think we can achieve those at the parking for 900, the 22 stalls that will be provided on 900, as well as there may be an opportunity to get additional private storage in the basement of one of the existing historic buildings. But to err on, just to be conservative and to be cautious, we are looking for that as a concession. And in addition to that, we're looking for waivers. And again, this really relates back to the fact that we are adaptively reusing existing historic buildings. Income limits, this is the same as what you had seen before in terms of 2020 HCD limits. 21 has come out, but there wasn't time to put that into the report. The AMI limits have increased slightly, but this is the same as what you had seen in 900. Unit mix and rents. This is displayed a little bit differently, but what you do see here, I think, is the fact that because we are financing this with 9% tax credits versus 4% tax credits, we are able to achieve lower rents than we were able to achieve in 900. I believe the average AMI on all of these units is about 45% versus 60% in 920. So we displayed it a little bit differently just to show you where units would fall, not only in the AMI spectrum, but also how they will qualify under home rules when we elect to put the home dollars in, which we do plan to do before we bring the AHA back to you, as well as achieving some extremely low RDA units. So the highest rent on one of these would be a 1-bedroom at $1,301 once the utility allowance is calculated. Again, and I apologize to you, again, my apologies. This is a discussion that we have had with abode communities. There is an ability to target deeper income on this project as well, because there's fewer units. The cost of doing so is less, and we can talk about that a little bit. Sources of funds, very similar to what we saw on 900. During construction, obviously, there'll be a large construction loan. All of the authority's dollars will be committed to the project on a pari passu process with the construction loan. There is some tax credit equity that will go into the project during construction. the majority of the tax credits will then go in once the project is built. There are deferred costs that you see through construction. We are also in this project looking for historic tax credit equity in addition to the 9%. And I did want to pause there to mention the state has been developing a historic tax credit program similar to the federal program. It's not in place yet and it's not yet funded. But if that is in place and it is funded prior to this project completing, we will apply for the state tax credits as well. And that additional dollars, at least the way the program's been drafted, would be very similar to what the federal historic tax credit dollars would be. And we could use that additional dollars to either pay down the authority's participation in the project, buy down additional rents, buy them down to the 50s, 40s, 30s perhaps, or some combination of those two. And then quickly on the terms, the letter of the loan, very similar. We're looking at between 30 and 60% area median income. We say for a minimum 55 years, that could be 65 years, it could even be 75 years, depending on the analysis that we'll have to do later on to show that all the residual receipts will be paid. Again, we're looking at a grand total of $9,550,000, sorry. And that includes $6,050,000 for land and $3.5 million as part of the action today. The per unit cost of $238,750 is high, but again, we're talking about an adaptive reuse and historic preservation of existing buildings. So we are adding 12 units of new construction. We're trying to bring that bang for the buck, if you will, to the table, but it is still, on a per unit basis, a relatively expensive project.
Mr. Fortney,
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember
Mr.
Agajanian has a
Ford,
question, I
thank you.
believe, on the
Thank you,
previous
Madam Mayor.
page.
Yes, ma'am.
Would you
Sorry,
go
I'm going too
previous,
quick.
please go to previous one, the page, I don't know, where is the number? There is no number. I guess. The one before, okay. Now,
Just
now the
one?
one
Source of
which
funds.
gives construction source of funds.
Next
and
slide, Mike.
Per unit,
There you go.
okay. So, per unit cost is 687,243 is the per unit cost? Why
Yes.
is- But this is 237,000 per unit more expensive than the other one. Is that right?
Yes. This project is more expensive than 900, both in terms of the total project cost per unit, as well as the subsidy required by the housing authority. And that largely falls on the fact that it is a 40-unit project and does not have the economies of scale that the 900 project has.
Yeah, but this is very expensive. Just for being, you're keeping portion of the building, right? As a historic building.
Yes.
But this is like over 50% more expensive than the other one. Isn't it?
Is that because, Mike, is that because it is historic and we have to make, as an adaptable reuse, we have to be especially careful of, with that studies and,
Is he still online?
I think.
Yes, Mayor, it is. We don't have the economies of scale on this project that we have with 900, but yes, in addition to that, Mayor, as you had suggested, this is an adaptive reuse and historic preservation. It's an expensive endeavor. Oftentimes, these can be more expensive than just ground up new construction.
Okay. And also, can you tell me what's the manager's unit size, please?
It is a 2-bedroom, and I will look for the square footage of that unit, and I will get that to you as soon as I can.
No, I just
I
want.
don't know it off the top of my head.
I'm just trying to just search like the other one. We cannot have like the king's unit and then all the rest of them small units, and then all of a sudden the manager has this such a lavish space. I mean, it should be sized accordingly. I can understand can be larger than 400 or 500, 600, but going to 930 again versus 400, that's too big in my opinion. Should be smaller manager unit. Thank you.
I will get you the exact square footage. I'm almost certain it is not as large as the one in 900. It is a 2-bedroom unit. It's a stacked unit, and it's actually the existing units for a gentleman named Tobin, which is what the school's namesake is, as well as his on-site caregiver. So currently, Tobin lives in the top unit. His caregiver lives in the bottom unit. They're connected by an inner stairwell. And those 2 units will be combined as a 2-bedroom unit. And that is what the resident manager will be. But I've been in that unit. I've been in both units. And I know from memory that is certainly is not the 930 square feet, but I'll confirm that number.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mike. Go ahead. Continue. Summary of terms.
Oh, yes. I see a hand, Mr. Ajinian.
Yes, Mike, I have a question. Is this a concurrent project simultaneously taking place at the same time?
It's a very good question. In a perfect world, yes, close to, but it all depends on when this one gets the award of tax credits versus when 900 gets the award. If we're very fortunate in getting tax credits for 900 on the first bite, and on the first bite in July when we apply here, the construction would commence very close to the same time. However, the construction of 920 will go faster than 900. So if they start at the same time, which is our hope, 920 will be delivered before 900 will. And that's just a function of not having to, dig a large subterranean structure for one example.
So 900 takes priority.
I wouldn't say either take priority. It's just a function of which ones get the award of tax credits. We can't break ground until we've got it fully financed.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we covered the terms of the letter of loan, I believe. Lease option is very similar to 900 East Broadway. Again, it's a minimum 55 years, most likely 65, perhaps even 75. And that will be in part as a result of the analysis that will have to be done. And we will bring that to you with the AHA. We're giving Abode the same time frame to secure the tax credits. That would be through 2022. The difference here is because it's a 9%, there's only 2 applications and 2 awards per year versus 4 per year on a 4%. So that is July, which they'll apply for this July with approval today. They will then have March of next year and July of next year also to apply if they're unable to get it in this round. Fiscal impact, part of it we've covered already. It's a $3.5 million ask from the Housing Authority in addition to the land. We propose to fund this with $543,000 in low and moderate income housing asset funds. Those funds have already been appropriated. We are also looking for the balance of that coming from Measure S. And those dollars, almost $3 million, will come from, as part of the fiscal year 21-22 Measure S proposed budget. Again, these funds will not be expended before the end of this calendar year. And the next steps, not unlike 900, they'll apply for tax credits. In this case, the tax credit application for 9% is in July of this year. We're scheduled to, my apologies on this slide, there is an error. The review and approval of design is not with the Design Review Board, as the slide indicates. My apologies for that. It's with the historic resources. So we will bring this not to design review, but it is scheduled for May 20th for design approval. We'll also, again, negotiate the AHA for the Housing Authority's consideration. And just like 900, once we've got those tax credits secured, immediately apply for building permits secured the additional funding. Construction could then commence at the very earliest, at the very end of this calendar year, more than likely the early part of next year, with a completion date of later in 2023. And again, same as before, we'll start the lease up and marketing 6 months prior to our anticipated C of O. We give ourselves 90 days after C of O to be 100% occupied, but typically we're occupied 45 days after the C of O. And with that, I'll conclude the presentation. The same staff that worked on 900 worked on 920, so I don't need to call all those great folks out again. But they're all here to answer any questions. Abode Communities is also here to answer any questions, as well as KFA, our architect, and ARG, our historical consultant. They're all here if you have any questions that I can't answer.
Okay, Mike, I just wanted to mention that the Design Review Board will not hear this project. It will be the Historic Preservation Commission. So just that, yes.
Yes, ma'am, I apologize for that.
That's okay. That's okay. All right. Do we have any callers?
Mayor, we do not.
We do not. Are any comments from my fellow colleagues? If not, I'll close the hearing.
If there is not, I would move the item.
Thank you. We have a motion on the floor.
I'll second the council motion.
Thank you. And a second. Mr. Ajamian, roll call, please.
Councilmember Agajanian,
Yes.
Brotman,
Yes.
Kasakian,
Yes.
Najarian,
Yes.
and Mayor Devine.
Yes, two fabulous projects. Let's hope that they both get the tax credits that we're asking for, and we can break ground and have these two built by 2024.
And do we have a motion for
Housing?
Yes.
3B?
I will move the item.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second?
Okay.
Second.
Motion was made by Authority Member Agajanian, and thank you, Authority Member Devine, for seconding it. Can we have a roll call, please?
Authority Member Arginian,
Yes.
Agajanian,
Yes.
Brotman,
Yes.
Devine,
Yes?
Najarian,
Yes.
Parazian,
Yes.
Chair Kasakian.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Good luck, Mike.
Great,
All
thank
right.
you, everybody. Very much appreciate it.
Thank you to staff. Next item,
Next would be adjournment.
and do I have a motion for council?
Yes. I would like to move to adjourn.
I'll second.
Roll call, please. I'm sorry,
Housing.
Mr. Casino.
And
Mr.
can we
Casino.
have a motion and a second to adjourn for Housing Authority?
Yes, I would move
To adjourn.
A second, okay, we
Thank
are
you.
adjourned. Okay, then on to the next. Ready? I'll call to order the Glendale City Council for May 4th at 4:38. And again, because of the COVID-19 novel coronavirus and health recommendations,